In 1997, the average house in Britain cost around 3 to 4 times the average salary. Today, it's closer to 6 to 8 times. And if you're in London, it's often more than 11 times average income. So clearly, there's a problem. And I don't mean to upset you by sharing this, but these were the stamp duty rates beginning of 1997, before Tony Blair and Gordon Brown got their paws into it. And these are the stamp duty rates today. Sickening. It's just sickening. Back in early 1997, stamp duty raised £675 million a year. It now raises the government £10 to £15 billion a year. So here's the uncomfortable question. Will you ever be able to buy a home in Britain again? Or is the dream of home ownership dead? Not by accident, but by design. Think about it. Whilst earnings have doubled since 1997, house prices have more than quadrupled. Why? That's what this video answers. And if you don't know me, I'm Gale. I've spent the last 13 years building 2 national property businesses, British Home Buyers and British Homesellers, a nationwide estate agency. Between them, my team's been involved in over 14,000 transactions worth more than £5 billion. And I can honestly say I've never seen it tougher for ordinary people to get on the ladder than it is right now. And it's just not fair, because home ownership matters. Now, some people will say, so what if fewer people own and more people rent? Isn't renting just as good? The truth is, it isn't. Home ownership matters, and not just for individuals, but society as a whole. The government's own English housing survey found homeowners consistently reported higher levels of life satisfaction and mental well-being. And let's not forget, you're building wealth through it. You own an asset that you're forced to pay down over time with your repayment mortgage, which can help to securing your retirement. Finally, communities are built on ownership. Homeowners are more likely to vote, to engage locally, to invest in their areas, their neighbourhoods. Strong communities don't come from a transient rental market. They come from people who feel rooted. So if Britain gives up home ownership because we don't protect it from the over-financialisation of the world, we're not just changing the housing market, we're changing families, we're changing communities, we're changing society itself. And if you think I'm being dramatic about all of this, just take a look at the data. By the early 2000s, Britain's home ownership rate peaked at around 70%. Today, it's falling towards 60%, but it's deeper than that. It's more people renting, trapped from building wealth, less social housing stabilising the market, less people owning property, yes, but those that do have more and more debt than ever before. So how did we get here? And is there actually a way back? Let's start with how the numbers simply don't add up. This is from the ONS Housing Affordability Report. Look at the median affordability ratio area by area for the year 1997. The lighter the colour, the more affordable it is. Now take a look at the most recent data. House prices increasing beyond the rate of wage inflation is quite literally looking like a virus spreading across our great nation. Just take a look at them side by side. The property market is an elastic band slowly being stretched, and whereas inflation is being watched like a hawk by the Bank of England, house price inflation is ignored. Why? The direction is inevitable right now. More and more of us will fall into 2 categories. One, rent, and will rent for more of our lives, or if lucky enough to own a home, will carry more and more burdensome debt. So the way you look at it is more of us will either rent or rent money via debt. And it is this trend that ultimately increases wealth inequality, traps more and more of our income in housing that isn't then being spent productively in the wider economy, which crushes growth and living standards even further. So surely if the situation is this bad, what is the government fix? Now, the government, I hope, knows there's a problem. That's why they've made the 5% deposit mortgage guarantee permanent, which sounds great on the face of it. You only need a 5% deposit. Yay. But here's the uncomfortable truth. These schemes don't actually make housing affordable. They just help people stretch further and further into more and more debt, which keeps this pyramid of debt growing and growing and growing and growing. And the greater levels of debt the younger generations get into, that ultimately funds the property chains up the housing ladder. And what else has happened? There's been a quiet loosening of the mortgage lending rules, which is a bit sneaky. First with the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, updating lenders in March on how they can relax mortgage stress test rules. And secondly, by modernising the system to make borrowing money, remortgaging more straightforward, making it cheaper, which, to be fair, that's a good thing. It should be easier, should be modernised. But what do you think is more important, that house prices rise in relation to average incomes rising, or that house prices rise in relation to greater levels of debt entering the system? And which do you think government policies is actually helping with? Not good, is it? And what makes this all worse is the rise of the corporate landlords. So while young families are struggling to save deposits, who's actually buying by the thousand? Who's capitalising on this whole situation, this whole weakness in the market? Today, we're no longer just competing with day-to-day landlords. We're competing with the likes of BlackRock, Lloyds Grainger UK, Legal in general. They own, quite literally, thousands of homes, not just a few, not a dozen, thousands. They're buying entire developments, entire streets, entire sites off developers. BlackRock is even buying into brick manufacturers, literally controlling the supply chain, the building blocks of UK housing. Blackstone is even buying up railway arches, for goodness sake. Why? Because housing is a safe investment. Inflation makes rents go up, debt stays fixed, people always need a place to live. Housing has become too profitable for us mere mortals. People who rent have to pay rent if they can't buy, even when everything else collapses around them. As you can see from the Maslow hierarchy of needs, we've all seen that before. Food, water and shelter are our core needs, and something the massive corporate landlord knows and have their sights set on to control more of. And I know right now corporate landlords represent a very small portion of the market right now, but the issue with this, the danger, is that that position is growing and growing and growing each year. And before you know it, this will be the future of home ownership. In Berlin, 85% of residents rent and corporations dominate the market. And what's happened as a consequence of that? Tenants were in a situation facing rent hikes of 40, 50%, sparking mass protests to take housing back into public hands. Are we sleepwalking into the same future? What do you think? How about the American warning? If you want to know where this leads, look at America. After the 2008 crash, Wall Street firms swooped in and bought foreclosed homes by the thousands. Today, in some US cities, 1 in 5 homes is owned by a corporate landlord. The result? Rents up 30 to 40% in many areas, lots of random extra junk fees, admin fees for tenants, repairs ignored while dividends flow to shareholders. That same model is creeping its way into the UK, and the more it grows, the less control ordinary people have over the cost of their own housing. Do we want local coffee shops or do we want Starbucks everywhere? This is the same sort of thing that's happening with housing. So look, why does this all matter? If Britain gives up on home ownership, we're not just changing the housing market, we're changing families, we're changing communities, we're changing society itself. And I'd add, the future of home ownership can't just be about forcing more and more people into more and more debt, because who owns that debt? More debt is then you renting more money. That's not building wealth, that's slowing the nation's ability to build wealth over their lifetimes, to retire. And to answer the question, will you ever be able to buy a home in Britain again? Yes, some of you will, but for most, it's harder than ever. And unless something changes, the system isn't built to make it easier, it's going to make it harder. If nothing changes, the honest answer at some point will be no. So look, what do you think? Is home ownership still possible, or is the system, in your view, rigged against ordinary people? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read all of your comments and I learn a lot from them. And if you want the truth about Britain's housing market, not just the spin. Make sure you subscribe, you share this channel. The more people we reach, the louder this conversation becomes. And if you liked this, I recommend you watch this video up here. Bye.